Hey, Keith. Um, I think one of the first things that would be cool to talk about, really, because you're someone that kind of like burst onto the scene really like 2018, 2019, and you kind of like were chipping away at that highest level of the sport. But from my perspective, I don't know if many fans would be the same sort of position as me, but obviously prior to that, you were pretty much unknown until you started hitting the podium of ADCC Trials pretty much every time you entered. So, how did you sort of like first get started with jiu-jitsu, prior to that?
Before that, I mean, I had done martial arts since I was a kid. I like started boxing when I was really young, and I was really into that. I did that until I was about like 16 or so, or maybe even later. But I was along the lines. I kind of at that boxing gym discovered jujitsu, and over time, I started to like that a little bit more. Um, and then from there, around like college, when I kind of dedicated myself full time to that.
Okay, cool. And if you sort of started out with like a striking background more than anything, then have you ever sort of like dipped your toes back into that in training, or have you just gone full in on jiu-jitsu since then?
Yeah, not really. Like sometimes, I mean, yeah, very rarely. I think I've taken like one, bags like punching bag like session in the past like six, probably more than that, like 7, 8 years.
Fair enough. So yeah, it's not something on the cards anytime soon then.
No, no, no. I couldn't imagine ever. Yeah, it would have to be an insane circumstance to get me to fight MMA or even do anything like well, I guess I did combat jiu-jitsu and wasn't that insane a circumstance, but like maybe something like close to MMA. I don't know. Seems different. It'd take pretty extreme circumstances to get me to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a lot different just adding strikes into jiu-jitsu than it is to just having a full-on striking match on the feet and then going
Yeah,
down to the ground.
for sure. That is definitely a different sport for sure.
And then for you personally, obviously, like I said, you kind of like it was about 2018, I think, you first started hitting the podium of ADCC trials, and then
Yeah.
you were pretty much there or thereabouts every year, every single time it came around. Um, was there any ever a time that you were sort of having to make adjustments to the way that you competed, like under that rule set, in order to get to that final step that you needed to win the invite?
Um, Man, yeah, I mean, not really. I just kind of always competed how I competed. Like, it didn't really matter where I was. I would, whether if I was on top, I would try to pass your guard and submit you. If I was on bottom, I'd try to, either sweep or submit you. And if I was, on the feet, I would just try to get to action as soon as possible. So, like, I think that lended itself to ADCC, like the way that they structure their, tournament, and it just kind of, yeah, I didn't really have to change my style at all, which was nice. Especially in my weight, I had all the attributes, I think, to beat a lot of the good guys, whereas like some guys maybe had a few really like a good skill set but just didn't have like the kind of, not saying I'm the most complete grappler, but they didn't have like the complete skill set to like deal with that style of competition, I guess. So yeah, I never really, yeah, I didn't, I was really lucky, frankly. Like, I just never had to think about it. I just, 10th Planet was just like all about like submitting people. And the only thing, like, when I was coming up, like, it would only ever be like someone asked you how a round went. It didn't matter if you got your guard passed a million times. If you tapped them, you won. So it'd be like, how many times did you tap them? And I'd be like, oh shit, I guess that's just all that matters. So like ADCC, it didn't really matter if someone passed my guard. And I didn't really run into that, but like in the sub only period, it was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna submit them, so it doesn't really matter. And in that way, I wasn't phased by like the nuance of changing positions and I don't know, scoring criteria and stuff. I just would attack all the time. It didn't matter if I overextended or anything. I was still confident I could continue to attack and beat people.
Yeah, well, I think for you as well, your like leg lock game was kind of quite advanced for
Mm.
the early like time that you were in the sport. You know what I mean? Because I mean,
Yeah.
right from day one, you've been submitting guys like Robert Davo, Junior Caggio, guys that are
Mhm.
really, really high level leg lockers. And you were, like I said at the time, kind of like relatively unknown taking them out. I mean, is that something that you like focus more on, the leg lock aspect of it, or is it just sort of like sheer coincidence that that's what's happened in those matches?
Well, no, that like, I mean, I definitely focus on leg locks for sure at purple belt, which is I think like around when I first started doing the trials, or I might have just got my brown belt, but it was around purple belt that I like really focused on um, anything the DDS guys were doing, to be honest, and it happened to be leg locks like Eddie Cummings, Gary Gordon, and I'm sure I'm forgetting like other guys in that crew. They were mostly winning with leg locks, I would say. And so I just copied everything they did. I would just copy, you know, um, like I would just copy their game plans pretty much however they were doing it. And because of that, like I think I just got ahead. Like I think you can get ahead just by watching what the good guys are doing. And yeah, and then going into the trials, I think I don't really think I leg locked too many people. Maybe like Junie, and then like another guy who was really good. But other than that, like I never really leg locked anyone, but it was like the threat of leg locks that would lead to a lot of other things. And so I wouldn't say my leg locks were like amazing, and like I was not the one hitter, like guy that would just like I see some guys that get on your leg and they tap, you have to tap. And like I was never really that guy, and I never really have been that guy. But I've used leg locks to like contribute to a more full arsenal of attacks, and like using the threat, and like maybe hopefully I'll make people think that I'm that like one hitter guy, and then they overreact, and then I get something else. That's like that just kind of was consequence of like my style. But I did try to get really good at leg locks. I wanted to be that like guy that just like tapped everyone super fast. But and in some events I'm sure I was. But on a macro level, at the high levels, I wasn't the guy that was just like heel hooking everyone.
Well, I think it's interesting as well that with the upcoming match you got with Diego Pato at who's number one, he is the only person I think in at least a couple of years now that has actually leg locked you. Obviously back at
Yeah.
ADCC.
Yeah.
So when you sort of like look back to that match, was there anything that you picked up from there? Looking ahead to the rematch now, was there anything that you've sort of seen that you can adjust or adapt to?
Yeah, I mean many things like Um, and I mean, I have the benefit now of knowing that I'm competing against him, whereas the last time I competed against him, and even we competed at the lower belts as well, I didn't know who he was, or I didn't know what his game was, and it's really hard to adjust to someone like that on the fly. And like I felt it as soon as I went against him last time. I was like, oh, I'm not prepared for this style. I was training ADCC, so it was all wrestling, so I was like wrestling a lot, and I wasn't really focusing on any guard work, guard passing, anything like that. And so I have the benefit now of being able to plan specifically for him. And yeah, like yeah, I mean he's honestly like he's the only top guy, and I was thinking about this recently because I'm just trying to extrapolate data from like I don't know all my past matches and his past matches and stuff like that, and like I really like think he's probably the only person that's tapped me of the top guys in the sport. Like he's kind of the only in my weight, at least. He's the only guy who's tapped me in competition in a long time. Like Ethan tapped me at brown belt, and like here and there, if I'm going up in weight and stuff, like I'll get caught. But like as far as like the 66 guys, when I'm competing against those guys, very few of them can tap me, and I've competed against pretty much all of them. But there is like an edge that I think they have in experience and like tactics and things like that. And so like it's one thing to not get tapped by someone. That's a small moral victory, but it's another to then figure out their game to a point where you can impose your strategy and your tactics in your game, and obviously ideally, win or tap them. And so like yeah, in this match, it's not just like, I don't want to get submitted. It's like I, need to figure out a way to not get submitted and to impose my game as well, And there's ways to do that, I think. I'm without giving too much away. I that's what I've been working on. It's the focus of the camp, and that's what I think I'm, going to do.
Yeah, and I think with Pato specifically, he's got quite a like you know exactly what he's going to do because I mean every single match he's going to pull guard and he's going to be relentless on chasing the legs. It's something that he does really really well, obviously, and I think it's kind of when you look at his ADCC matches, he's quite happy to eat like penalty points really early on just because he wants to get where he's going to go and he's confident he's going to finish you. And I think and there's something like who's number one where you don't have to worry about those penalties. It's even more of a certainty then that he's gonna go where he wants to go kind of thing. So is that
Yeah.
what you've been preparing for as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. He knows where he wants to be. He's got very clear paths once he gets there. So, yeah, disrupting that and having answers to that is the main focus.
And obviously, you mentioned like moving up in weight, and you have done quite a few matches against bigger opponents.
Mm.
I think it was just a couple of months ago when you fought Jed Polaris, and
Hmm.
he's obviously a fair bit bigger than you as well. I know he's done like welterweight, middleweight matches before.
Yeah.
So, is that something that you're interested in doing more of? Like, do you specifically move up in weight like to challenge yourself, or is it just something that comes up every now and then and you fancy doing it kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to compete anytime, anywhere. If someone asks me to compete, like I'm usually gonna say yes, frankly. And I like the challenge. I like competing against different people. I like pushing myself, and sometimes I push myself way too far. And I'm kind of okay with that because I'm not really protecting anything. Like I'm not the guy that like cares about you know like public perception or anything like that. Like losing isn't the end of the world to me. It's more about like how I respond to losing and how I can perform or like improve after maybe like just like overextending. And yeah, I man, like I don't know, players just happened to text me about the match with Jed, and I was like, absolutely. um and like similar situations like that have come up, and I enjoy it. Like sometimes, like I said, I go against some people that I'm like maybe outsized or outmatched or whatever, and that's okay. I think there's like always ways to beat those type of opponents, and I'm willing to take on that challenge because I think it's going to make me in the long run a lot better. And yeah, I think I just find it fun. I find competing fun, and a lot of times, like competing at like random events or like different events against different opponents, bigger opponents, whatever, kind of like makes it more fun. And I don't know, I try to do this because I like it and not just because it's something I have to do. So yeah, with all that said, yeah, it's definitely something I try to do and try to make you know uh, a fun thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really big challenge as well for anyone that does anything that they love as a job. It is difficult to make sure that you get to still enjoy it, 5 years in and stuff when you've been grinding away at it, and especially like a sport as well, because you do really put your body to the grind there. There are days you don't want to do it, obviously. So, is there anything else that you do to sort of like keep it fun in training and keep that like passion alive, kind of thing?
Hmm. I mean, avoiding overtraining, that's a good one. You can't really help that when you're in camp for something, say ADCC or who's number one. You do have to overtrain to some degree or train a lot to a point where you're kind of like, all right, I'm a little sick of this. Uh, um, but, you know, um, in general, yeah, I mean, working on different things, maybe picking up different hobbies is a like really helpful one too. Like I try to do some different stuff every now and then. Like I try to kind of pick up a few things. Like over the years have like dabbled in like surfing and playing music and I don't know, even like, just like other athletic activities. Like if someone asked me to go play pickleball or like, I don't know, go for a run or, a hike or something, like I like that, it kind of breaks the monotony and yeah, maybe makes things a little more interesting. It's hard when, you just, yeah, I don't know, even at a normal job, like you're just doing the same thing every day is very, very difficult. And, I've done that. And even if like I have a job that like tries to keep things fresh and they try to like, keep you engaged and stuff, it's rarely does it work, So I try to just, I don't know, keep things light and like fresh. And I don't know. I know I want to do jujitsu forever and I want to love it forever. So there's no real rush for me to like just do it all now. I can kind of space it out over the course of my life.
Yeah, that was a very good point as well. Like you got guys like, especially, I know it's a little bit different, obviously, like the sort of like submission only or no-gi circuit compared to like IBJJF, but you do get guys competing well into their 40s and 50s against people the same age, you know? Is that the same
Yeah.
sort of thing you've got like one eye on in the future then?
Sure. I never thought about that, but I probably will be that guy. Um, yeah, only if I love it though, if I don't, then I probably won't. I'd say I will more likely be the super fight guy. Like I'll be, like Boogie's good at this. Like he doesn't compete, a whole lot anymore because, believe it or not, he's like almost 40. I like he didn't even realize that when he told me. Um but he has a really and he's really competitive and he trains really hard with us a lot, but he can't compete every weekend anymore. So he'll just take like some like cool super fights, like whenever he can. Like they offer him a cool, UFC fighter or like another, guy. Like he did a match with Rafael Lovato a few years ago. He's done matches with like some UFC fighters like Gilson. Oh my God, no, the Gleison Tebow. So like guys, it's like it's fun and cool and it's just one single match you can focus on, and it's not like yeah, it's just fun. It's not super serious. And I will likely be that guy if I do compete at that point. But if I decide that I don't like it anymore, then I probably won't. I don't need, yeah, I don't need attention. I don't need any more like notoriety than I have now or than I ever have had. And I don't need, it's not like I'm not really motivated by money. So like, I don't know. As long as I enjoy doing it, I'm happy doing it, and I want to, then I probably will. It's not really like I'm not like super competitive or like I'm not like like I said, I'm not motivated by like followers or you know like fame. Like I said, I just like doing this because I like doing it, and I like challenges, and I like pushing myself, and I like trying to be a better person, and like a more complete person, I should say. So if at some point I run into that and I want to do a master's division, something, I probably will. But if not, I'll probably just, I don't know. Who knows?
So that's quite interesting as well, to be honest with you, because you said obviously you're not really in it for money or anything, which let's be real, there's not really a lot of money
Yeah,
in
yeah,
jiu-jitsu,
yeah.
there,
It's
there
very
is
easy to
anyway.
buy that back. Yeah.
But if you're not really sort of like motivated by money and not really bothered about like the fame, what there is in jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? Then what is it that sort of like draws you to the sport and keeps you coming back for competition? Is it literally just the challenge aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and like I'm kind of on like a lifelong quest to become a better person and like to see my full potential to the end. And like who knows what that is and what I can do with it, but like something that seems to be helping me become a better person and reach whatever this potential is jujitsu. And so like I'm kind of trying to use it as a tool to like find out who and what I can be. And if nothing else, like I just want to know that I'm trying to be the best person I can be, and if I become a role model at some point along the line, like that's great. But I think you can make the world a much better place, even for just yourself, by really respecting yourself and like working hard at anything and trying to just be who you like the best version of yourself that you think you can be, you know? Like I think we all kind of should have a belief in ourselves that we can be something great. But you're really probably not going to get there unless you're like taking some risks and trying some things and like doing something that's going to make you like force you to be better, you know? And jujitsu kind of is that. If you just show up to the gym every single day and you try to spam single leg X on your training partners, they're probably gonna figure that out very quick, and then you won't be really be getting better, you know. So you come in the next day and you're really good at X guard, and then the next day they count, and you know, and it's just this constant thing that makes you be better. Anything that does that, I'm trying to do, you know. Even like man, I mean, on a very micro example, like maybe going for like a long walk or something. Like maybe it's challenging at first and you can't walk that far, and then the next day you're like, I can actually do a little further than that, and a hike it, so something like that. So anything like that I really enjoy. And yeah, I mean, there's no fame from walking or hiking, but a lot of people love doing it, you know. And I consider jujitsu kind of the same thing. It's yeah, just something that I can do to make myself feel like I'm, you know, being I'm holding like my uh self accountable, you know.
Yeah, it's those little improvements over time building up and making yourself. I think a lot of people get this feeling once they've been in the sport for a couple of years, where like you look back to where you were 3, 4 years ago, and it's the difference is gigantic, even though every single day doesn't really feel that different at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and then for you, obviously, Pato is quite literally like top 2 or 3 guys in the weight class. I think that's pretty fair to say for anyone who follows the sport. He's literally right there. Gold, sorry, silver medal at ADCC. It's
Yeah,
the
it
pinnacle of the
feels
sport.
like gold, right? Yeah, it doesn't even feel like you know what I mean? Like he's just that guy. Like, you know, you're kind of like, oh, he lost? That's crazy, you know?
Yeah, and
That's crazy. Being that guy is like is crazy to me, you know?
yeah, and I think for you, obviously, it's a good opportunity to come up against someone like that. Is it something that you see as like another sort of like stepping stone on the way to that continual improvement? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with his accolades. I mean, like I I consider him, you know, one of the top like pound for pound grapplers on earth. I could make a very solid argument that he's number one, regardless of like these losses or these, you know, which he has very few. And like it's more so the fact that he's a master of his craft. That's someone I want to feel, I want to compete against, I want to prepare for, I want to study, I want to, you know, train with them in mind. Like that is the thing that really pushes me. It's his skill and his, you know, like respecting what he's done and like how hard he's worked to get there. It's less of like, you know, I really could care less how many gi titles he has or no gi titles. Like, you know, I just respect how good he is and like how fearless he is, and I think that's a really cool thing. But like on top of anything, I appreciate how like like how much he is quite literally like a master of his sport. I really respect that, and like I've always kind of looked up to people in that position, you know, in any sport. Um, and yeah, I mean, hopefully, just like even being adjacent to a person like that is like you get a little bit of a rub from them, and like, um, yeah, would hope that I think just in all ways, it's a positive, you know. But on top of anything, I think I am more than capable of winning matches like these, you know. Like if I prepare, if I do all the right things, and if I show up how I know I can, I mean, I'm perfectly capable of beating anyone, you know. Which is, you know, like a, you know, I think maybe something that some of his other opponents, from what I can tell, like either don't truly believe. It seems like people compete against him with like, you know, I'm sure everyone's competitive, but I think a lot of people are probably just, you know, like over respect him, you know, because they're kind of thinking more like, oh, this is Pato. I think more like, oh, this is a very, you know, skilled player. This is, you know, these are all of his skills laid out on a platter for me to dissect and address. You know, I think a lot of people seem to like compete with like maybe a little too much respect, and maybe there's some fear, maybe there's some hesitancy based on other things, but like, I just kind of like look at it pragmatically, I guess, and just see what is in front of me, and not like who is in front of me.
I think that's a really really good point as well because that does I think more so in combat sports than anywhere else that really does come into play where when someone reaches that level, like Pato, Mika Galvao, Gordon Ryan, those kind of guys, they do have that kind of like aura where you see people competing against someone else a week before, and the sort of like level of performance they bring out is almost not as good, just because, like you said, that feeling of like trying to take down the mountain is sometimes a little bit too much. But it's really cool to hear that that's something that you're not really not really worried
Yeah.
about. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then for you as well, is there anything else that you've got your eye on for the rest of this year? Because I know it's quite early, so maybe you haven't got too much booked, but is there anything you've got sort of like one eye on for the future now?
Nope, nothing. I'm kind of just like the kind of a yes man, like I'm just open to anything, and I love uh being open to everything. Like I love not having concrete definitive plans, because plans never go how you think they're gonna go. Like it's, yeah, like honestly, I've never really had things in the way in my mind. Things are gonna happen exactly that way. I have goals and stuff, of course, but like plans, not really. I'd like to, like, goals would just be maybe some, big shows and big matches, but like nothing really specific. Maybe, Fight Pass or Invitational, or some more matches on Polaris, or you know, I don't know, what are some, like, Karate Combat would be fun, the Pit thing, CGI, stuff like that. Um, but I don't know. I kind of take it day by day, and yeah. I'm happy living that way. It's like less stressful, I think. It's just more fun, more unpredictable, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah, and I think it's quite cool as well hearing that you're open to. I know you are from obviously watching past matches and stuff. Like you said, you've done combat jiu-jitsu, done matches against people twice your size. You know what I mean? You've
Yeah.
done. I think didn't you do like a CGI rules match as well recently?
Yeah,
Um,
recently, yeah, just last year.
yeah, it was the 3 5 minute round one, wasn't it? So it's like another sort of like different rule set, but it's cool to see as well what you mentioned earlier that you do approach everything the exact same way. You don't tend to like play to the rule set, if that makes sense.
Yep.
You are the same competitor day in day out, which is it's good to see as well because I think on like a personal level, I think that sort of like is a better way to tell who. It sounds stupid, but it's a better way to tell who is the better person on the day, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
When you play to the rule set, I find a lot of the time the grappler who isn't necessarily better on a technical level can
Mhm.
draw out the win, from precision or like small points advantage or something. Whereas, yes, if everyone approaches it the same way you do tend to end up with the better man winning 9 times out of 10 because you are just going for the win. You know what I mean? You're not
Yeah.
trying to eke it out by like small margins. Um,
Yeah.
and then for you, obviously coming up to this year now, obviously you'll have ADCC trial again at the end of the year. Is that something you've got an eye on as well? Are you sort of like I know you wouldn't be preparing yet, but are you got that in mind then for the end of the year?
Maybe. I don't know. I was thinking about that as you were asking me. I hadn't really thought about it. I forgot that was even this year, because like I forget, the ADCC cycles every 2 years, and like, yeah, I don't know. It's cool, I guess, because it's like, who knows if it's good and bad, but like, I don't know. It was never a thought in my mind back in the day. Like I would be at trials regardless of anything that could happen. And like ADCC was all I could think about ever. And like I'm kind of at a point in my life, and especially after this last ADCC, I was like, so fun. I like really had a great time. I'm really grateful to be there and stuff. But like, there's just, I don't know, there's more to life. There's more to my competitive career even, and there's, like, you know, I don't know. I've experienced it, and trials is a really big, training commitment. ADCC is a really big training commitment. Um, you know, Travel commitment as well. Because like you have to go to the trials, which are either in Vegas or the East Coast. And, East Coast is far from me, and Vegas is not my favorite place. And, I have I have dual citizenship with the UK, so like I could even go do the European trials, but that's still a huge travel commitment. So like I have to see what's up, Um, but I love doing them. It's hard for me to sit out of things that I enjoy doing, and trials is definitely one of them. So we'll see. But I hadn't really made any plans to do that as of yet. We'll see.
And you actually mentioned something I didn't realize that. I didn't know you had dual citizenship in the UK as well.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
never actually done European trials, though, have you?
I've never really had to be honest. Because previously I had medaled at like every trial. I medaled, or I guess I won one of them. But like always kind of had a way into ADCC through just the North American trial, so I never had to. So um, yeah. And obviously I mentioned it's a big travel commitment and training commitment. So I was like, if I could avoid that, it's kind of better. It's better. But yeah, I can do them, and maybe someday I will, just to say that I did. I think that's kind of a cool bucket list thing, because I love watching the European trials, and like, yeah, I do love watching them, and they're exclusive, obviously, to people from the region. So like, that's kind of a cool thing. I would enjoy doing that. I think, or at least like just crossing that off the old bucket list. But if I do something, I would like to show up with the intention of like doing well and preparing well, and I have to be in that mindset. If I'm just doing something to do something, I kind of tend to underperform. And so yeah, that's kind of why I haven't really done them yet. But yeah, someday I probably will. I think it'd be fun.
And is there any, because I think you make a good point as well that because of the fact that ADCC trials are split among continents and stuff, you do see like rising stars from different areas that maybe don't get the same sort of exposure in the US quite a lot. Um, is there anyone, outside the sort of like major stars in the sport that you're actually interested in competing against soon? Like, I don't know, like Dorian Oliveira maybe, or like Owen Jones or anyone like that that's kind of like they're at the same sort of level where they've been at ADCC, you know what I mean? But they're maybe not as famous as guys like Pato or
Oh yeah, I'm not just like someone who's only going to compete against the top, like the only Patos or like someone else. Like no one, I don't view anyone as beneath me in any way. I'm like more than willing to go against everyone, and I kind of like owe it to the sport and to like all the guys that competed against me when I was coming up. And like truly, that's just how the sport evolves. Like you don't stay young forever. You don't stay in the same position you're at forever. You will at some point have to adjust and like compete against guys that you like don't really know anything about or expect to. So like trials is a perfect example. I've gone against tons of guys that I don't even think about. I'm just going out there to kill them, and they end up being really good, and people after will always be like, oh, you beat that kid at trials. Like they said, because every single trials it's like, oh, you beat this kid, he trains in my gym, he's like, he crushes the region. Like he's like 16, 17, but he like taps adults all the time. Like he's such a beast. And I'm like, I just kind of saw him as another dude I was gonna beat. And like I've just kind of always thought that. And then at some point, like like I'm sure I was that kid at some point, coming up, and then now, I am like in that position, and I don't know, I just kind of just like I said, I look at it as always something to solve. I don't care who a person is. I care like what they are, what skill set they bring, how they feel. I'd like could care less if someone is the best player in the world, or if they're the best guy in their like gym. I'm gonna approach them under the same kind of circumstance, or under the same headspace, like address grips, address attacks, address um, you know anything, right? So yeah, so that's funny, but yeah, I'm totally willing to compete against anyone. I've had matches with Owen Jones booked over the past like year. They just haven't happened. And I'm sure at some point those will happen. And Dorian, even I've had matches, I think, kind of talked about. No, nothing officially booked ever, but I've had those as well. And usually those Yeah, usually those are good. I'm always like down to do that.
I think as well. I spoke to Dante Leon not too long ago now, and he said something similar about that whole like own it to the next generation. Where he was sort of looking at it from the perspective of if if he's that young guy that beats the veterans in the sport, amazing. You know what I mean? That's kind of how you make a name. But then how you become like that next sort of like level is when you reach like the later stages of your career and you're still beating the new guy on the scene that everyone's hyped up about. You know what I mean? That's how you
Yeah.
get to that level of those guys like, Wagner Rocha, Rafael Lovato, where it's like they feel as though they've been there forever. You know what I mean? Is that the same kind of thing you're looking towards as well? Like I said, obviously at a certain time everyone slows down, but I think your weight class as well, it's always tough as you get not even particularly old for the sport. You know what I mean? It's
Mm.
quite a young man's like weight class, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, totally.
Um, but yeah, is that something that you're like considering as well moving forward? Is like if you can beat that next generation and just stay, like I said, at the highest level, then that's kind of to your point about improvement and that sort of thing. That's kind of like
Mm.
cementing your place as someone that has been able to do it for that, a decade or something like that. Because it's already been like
Yeah.
what six,
I
7 years that you've been at the top, really.
yeah, I mean, yeah, around there for sure. I'd say around there. Maybe, yeah. It's funny. Definitely not like I don't really care about legacy. I don't care about like because like I know personally like that like I forget about people all the time, right? And so like I think like holding on to the hope that like you'll make such an impact on someone that they remember you forever is kind of lame and like kind of unrealistic. And especially in a sport like jiu-jitsu that like only reaches such a wide audience and like only means so much really. It's super unrealistic for you to be like, like, oh, I'm gonna stamp a legacy in the sport that people will remember forever. Um, Dude, people don't know who Aristotle is. They don't know who Confucius is. They don't know who Marcus Aurelius is. Like that's crazy, right? But that's just and even in like, dude, some kids don't even know who like if you ask them who Lucille Ball was, they'd be like, "Who the is that?" She's the most iconic, woman in American history in like, a period of, you know, um of the, 20th century. Uh People just won't know. So like, yeah, like I don't really care about making any sort of legacy, lasting legacy like that. I do care about like, I don't care about, but I would like to figure out how to compete against young guys as I age and as my style changes and as my physical capabilities maybe change. I'd like to figure out how to compete against guys, for or even just roll with guys. But that's going to be a never ending thing. Like, of course, if I want to train for a long time, I'm going to have to figure those things out. And that's more exciting to me. But less of like, stamping any sort of legacy. That means very little to me.
That's a good way of look. That's a very, very good point as well. To be fair, like that, like you said, some of the greatest minds that the world's ever known. Like 90% of the population wouldn't even know the name if you said it. So yeah, that kind of thing does put it into perspective what jiu-jitsu really is, which is, to be blunt, it's a really small sport that only a certain number of people pay any attention to.
Yeah.
Um,
For sure. Yeah. Dude, I'm shocked. I'm shocked when like even someone like you asked me to talk to them. Why would anyone give a what I, care to say? And so like, you know, in that I always take it more like um it means more to me because of that, I guess. And I guess it's a quick aside, maybe. But like to your point about just the sport being insanely small and maybe like, yeah, people not just, dude, like, people's names after they die and like, time passes, like they're just words, really. Like no one really could even put a face to many of these names, these like historical figures, right? um if they even know them, it's a name. They don't know barely anything about them, right? um and so like I'm at some point that will be me, that'll be us, and like really all you can focus on is like the now and like the person you're talking to right now or the person you're with or whatever. So anyways, I think about that in a lot less morbid way than I'm making it sound.
Yeah, it definitely does sound a bit grim, but I do get your point. It is a good point though. It does make sense really, and I think it's a good way to. I think looking at it from people like coming up in the sport, a lot of the time, people see like the next competition as this huge thing that maybe even doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things in terms of their career. Never mind in the grand scheme of things of their life. You know what I mean? Whereas that's not how it looks when you're 19 years old and you're going to ADCC trials for the first time or something like that.
Yeah,
It does
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like this is the biggest moment that you're ever going to have. But I think that's a really good way to sort of like put those moments into perspective. And I think to your sort of like career, that's probably got a decent like impact on your success over the years as well. Because I think if you've always approached it at that level, that's got to have like a mental advantage over some people that, like you said, get lost in like the name they're facing or the moment that they're in. And I think that's
Mhm.
something that for sure is going to pay off when you fight someone like Pato Oliveira.
Hmm. Thank you, bro. Yeah, yeah, I hope so. But that's not why I do it, you know. It's just I try to just be grounded and live in reality and like yeah, and it does help. Like I think take the pressure off maybe match individual matches, individual competitions, and yeah, it sucks. And I'm not someone that loves losing. Like you'll see me, be upset when I lose, but that's like more because in the moment, like I failed this vision, of like like success or whatever that I had, but like that fades incredibly quickly because failure is kind of a relative term, and like I don't really view anything as failure. I view, if anything, failure as like more productive than success, in that it pushes you a little bit further than like success does. Success can kind of make you a little bit stagnant or a little bit like complacent, whereas like failure or whatever, disappointment, whatever, even disgust, like those things force you like to actively make change and be better. And I in some ways really like that feeling. I don't like the act itself. I like the like repercussions of those acts, I guess.
Yeah, that's cool. No, that's a nice way to, I think, sort of like round off what we've been talking about. And I think, that does pretty much bring everything into focus, like your career and how you sort of like got to this point now. It does really put everything into perspective. That's pretty much everything I wanted to go through with you as well. But is there anything that you want to say before I let you go, or is there anyone you want to give a shout out to, or anything like that?
Oh, shout out. Yeah. Well, I love shout outs. Yeah. I know they're super boring, but shout out to Tommy, my sponsor. They're over by you. Shout out to Planet San Diego, 10 Planet, all the 10 planets. My teammates, friends, family, girlfriend, like, my kitty. Like, I just, my kitten. That's not a pet name for my girlfriend. My actual kitten. Like I don't know. I'm so grateful and so like loved by so many people, and I hate to make it sound all like self-absorbed and because it's like not like they all just live to worship me, like but I do feel really supported by everyone, and I try to help make sure they feel supported as well and loved, and yeah. So yeah, yeah, you can cut that out if you want. I know that's like it kills a podcast usually, but
No, it's cool. No problem at all. Honestly, it's a nice sentiment as well.
yeah,
But
yeah,
thanks very much for your time as well. I do appreciate it, and take it easy and good luck on who's number one as well.
yeah. Thank you very much, man, and thank you for making time. I know it's super late, and but I appreciate you.
No worries. Thanks very much.